Hey, welcome to another YouTube video. In this video, I am going to be taking you through the entire process or tutorial on how I compose a loose floral watercolor piece. This is an actual job that I'll be working on, and I'm going to be coaching you through why I place certain flowers where and color mixing and all of that. I have specific design direction from the company that I'm working with. I can't mention who it is. I can't mention what it's going to be on, but essentially this is a licensing job and it's going to be used on home good products. And the design direction that I have is to have a just picked wildflower feel and that it's going to be released in the spring season. And I also have specific Pantone colors that I have been sent as design direction from the actual brand that I'm working with. And so throughout this tutorial, we'll be following that design direction. Just a heads up, I will be referencing my computer. I can't show you what's on the computer. Top secret information on this licensing program. But if you see me looking over to my computer, I'm just looking at Pantone colors and specific photographs of floral centerpieces and photographs that they sent me of flowers that they want included in the actual piece. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so if you've never worked with a Pantone book before, we'll link below to the specific one that I use and also all the supplies that I'm using in today's video. But the design direction that I have from the brand that I'm working with has a few flowers that they want to see in the piece. They want to see some ranunculus, some roses, peonies, daffodils, bluebells, and just a couple other filler ones. The specific color palette that they're wanting to see includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like about 15 different Pantone colors that they sent over. The reason why I'm pulling up my Pantone color matching book instead of just going off what they sent me on in email is because the retina display of different computers is going to display the colors differently. And so to just reference the actual color that they want, that's why I have this book. And so they sent me over the actual Pantone matching system codes for the colors. So for example, Pantone 178 is a color. That's right here in the book. So I have that pulled up. Pantone 671 is pulled up. That's the second color in this purple area. And then Pantone 128, which is the second yellow. Oh boy, it gets really complicated when you're trying to pull up multiple colors. I'm only gonna pull up 3 colors in my Pantone book and then just reference my computer for the other ones because these are probably gonna be the 3 main colors that I work with for the florals. For like the violets or the forget-me-nots, I'm going to use the purple tones, and then for the peonies and roses, I'm going to use the pinky hues. And then if I do any daffodils or other sorts of filler, I'm going to use the yellow color. And then the other ones, like they sent over a few greens and blues that I'm going to reference just on my computer. So to get started, I have all my supplies linked below that I'll be using in this piece. But I am going to be working probably the whole time with my size 6 brush. The main reason for this is I know I want it to be dense and kind of like if you were to just grab a cluster of wildflowers from a varying species of wildflowers. So I want it to feel dense, but so if I use my size 16, I have like less control to get small and detailed with my florals. And then this one is just I love this brush. It's my go-to brush for these more dense, considered busy floral pieces. So I've got my size 6 brush, my 2 cups of water to separate when I'm rinsing off a warm color and then when I'm rinsing off a cool color to keep those colors separated so it doesn't get muddy in my palette. And then to get started, I'm just going to start color mixing. So I have my Pantone book pulled up for that color 178U. And in my mixing well over here, I have a pretty good base for that color from a previous piece that I painted probably a couple weeks ago, but I'm just going to add a bit more pink to it. It's got that nice orangey undertone that I want from the Pantone color, but I want more pink, so I'm going to add some aqua rose to it. So just by adding water to this pre-dried color in my mixing well livens it back up and it makes it usable again. That's why I love watercolor so much. Nothing goes to waste. But I'm going to add some more Opera Rose to it to get it to this 178 EU color. And I want to make a big batch because I know I'm going to use this color a lot. I'm also going to lighten it for some florals for a lighter value. Maybe a touch more orange, cadmium orange and Opera Rose. So usually in licensing programs, the design direction has specific, if it's floral, has specific florals that they want seen in the piece, but overall every licensing program has general color palette direction, and so this one has actual Pantone colors. That's not always the case, but if a client sends over images of florals and colors that they want to see, then I will pull up my Pantone Plus Series Pantone color matching book and just use it as reference while I'm painting and mixing colors. All right, so that's a pretty good sized batch of this pinky corally color. I'm gonna now mix up my light purple for my violets and maybe some forget-me-nots. So I'm gonna use cobalt blue as my base instead of Prussian blue to mix with a red or a pink. I know that this color blue is a bit more rich, and it also just overall kind of helps to soften the purple color, so it's not just like a bright Lakers color purple. It's more like a soft floral purple. Technical words. And then I'm going to mix this blue with pink instead of red, because I love the way cobalt blue and Opera Rose mixed together. I think it's gorgeous. And I have a touch of green in here too because I'm just going straight onto my mixing well, not worrying about the green getting in there because it's also adding to that smoky feel. And to overcome or combat the smokiness that I'm seeing, I'm just adding more Opera Rose. And then if I need to, I can add a touch of Prussian blue to make it kind of counteract the smokiness. So it's just kind of going off of following your gut on color, but the more you practice and the more you mix colors, the better you're going to become about knowing what colors to mix with each other to get certain colors. So just continue doing it, continue practicing color mixing. That's why I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, watching the color study color mixing video tutorial that we did a couple weeks ago. Super good. Helpful for color mixing and color theory. All right, so there is my forget-me-not violet color. I can lighten it and I can add a touch of pink to it for certain floral pieces throughout the piece. But this is just going to be my overall go-to that I add certain colors to or lighten it throughout. And then I'm going to mix up my green. They have this like sage green in the design brief that I'm going to use this olive green in my palette. I never get to use this color because I rarely use it anymore, but it has a brown undertone, so I'm going to use it for this job. I'm going to grab a lot of it and bring it over to my mixing well and maybe add a touch of brown. You can also, to mute or make a color feel more muted, just mix in a touch of its contrasting color. So green's contrasting color is red. I'm going to grab a touch of Scarlet Lake, and instead of adding black to it to make it darker or more muted, I'm going to add red to it because it still keeps the richness of the color, but it just makes it more of like a earth tone green. And that's pretty much what they sent. I might want to bring a little bit more blue back, so I'm just going to grab a touch of Prussian blue and mix it in. And that's pretty good. This color, if you have a Pantone book for reference, is 794. and 5555 is a darker version of it. There's my green, got my corally pink, got my purple, and we have this light-ish turquoise color in the design direction as well. I can basically use phthalo turquoise by itself and lighten it for that one. And we've got some darker purples, which I can just darken this color for hints of that here and there. So I think we're pretty much ready to go. The yellow that they referenced, this 128, is basically lemon yellow deep by itself. So I don't need to mix up a separate color for that. So I'm ready to stop painting. I like to mix up for licensing programs where I have a specific color palette that I'm following. I like to mix up all of my colors in the mixing wells like this, like what I just showed you beforehand. So that I can work wet and wet really quickly and easily. So if I paint something and I want it to blend with the floral next to it, but I haven't mixed up the color that I want for that next floral, then I'm wasting time, dry time, for that flower. And so it's drying as I'm mixing the color and I won't be able to achieve wet and wet. So, I like to work quickly once I start painting. So having all of my colors, pretty much all of my colors ready to go is super helpful. All right, so generally speaking, when I start a busy like floral composition piece like this, I like to start in the top left-hand corner and work my way down in a zigzag. So in terms of composition, you basically want to keep in mind that the person viewing the piece, you don't want to allow their eyes or help lead their eyes to just landing on the center of the piece. You want them to land in a zigzag or S shape across your piece of paper, your canvas, whatever you're painting, especially when it's this busy type of floral piece. So we also want to keep in mind the rule of thirds. We want to keep in mind that we don't want even pairs of all of our florals, because again, people's eyes subconsciously are going to start grouping things or pairing things together and want to look for the next pair. So if we have things in threes or odd numbers, that is going to help us create that zigzag across our piece of paper. And then as well, literally creating a zigzag. So if we have a bright pink peony up here, let's maybe do another similar colored peony down here to lead people's eyes in a zigzag, and then maybe something similar in color down here. So we're literally creating a zigzag or an S shape across the paper or the canvas. That is just going to help bring clarity and bring focus to your piece when somebody is viewing it and looking at it and seeing a really dense and busy wildflower floral piece. They're going to still have movement throughout the piece. They're going to know exactly where to go next because you're creating a zigzag with your colors, with your shapes, and all of that. So just keep that in mind. As I'm painting, that's basically what I'm going for when it comes to composition, with exceptions to those rules. Here's and there's. So I'm going to start with peony. Probably a side-facing peony that's pointing up to the left so that I'm grabbing people's eyes from the top left corner and leading them down through the piece. If you are left-handed, start in the top right corner. I start in the top left just because it's easy access for me being right-handed, but it might be easier for you as a left-handed artist if you start in the top right-hand corner, or if you're painting on a block of paper like I am, you can rotate the paper as you paint so it's easier for you to get the angle you want. So I am going to start with the side-facing peony. So I'm not going to explain how I form and shape all of these flowers. We have, for a peony specifically, we have an actual video tutorial on how to paint peonies. So if you want to learn that, make sure you go check out that video. This is going to be more about composition and little tutorials on composition, notes on composition, and color mixing for a floral piece. So if you want to learn how to learn how to paint a peony specifically, go check out that video. So I'm going to start with the side. So the overall shape of a peony from the side is a bowl. I love, if you have purchased any of my books, all of my focus when it comes to watercolor is on basic shapes. So I'm going to go after this bowl shape, and I'm starting in the top left-hand corner. So I'm basically just pointing my brush down to where I know the stem would be on this flower, and I'm giving it these marks that act as tiny little petals, and always point back to where the stem would be. Again, if you don't know how to paint a peony and you want to learn how, make sure you check out that video on painting peonies. So I've got my basic cone shape, and then I'm going to bring in some more petals here, get longer with it. And for each petal, I'm providing a slightly different twist on the hue. So I'm maybe adding a bit more opera rose to certain petals or some more orange to other petals. I love using wet and wet technique for the base of peony petals. I just think it really adds a nice dimension to the petal. And then for these back rows of petals, I like to be really light so that it shows that they're in the background versus the foreground. Okay, so I'm gonna reference this color down here with another peony type. Maybe making this one a bit more orange, but still has that undertone, the same undertone. So I'm gonna be facing downward, which I usually like to pull towards me, so this is usually the position I like to be in for painting peonies. So while some of these petals are still wet, I'm going to start painting some leaves. We have an entire series on painting leaves and different types of leaves, so if you don't know how to paint leaves, make sure you check that tutorial out. But the reason why I'm hopping over to leaves right now is because I love these little moments where the green blends into the pink. I think it's really fascinating to look at. And so I'm just going to paint a few leaves there and stems, pointing directly to the center of the flower with my stems. Now I'm going to start moving on. I'm going to have a third pink moment somewhere, probably down here. But I'm going to start putting in some of these purple bits because these are going to be great filler flowers. Kind of like larkspur looking, but like violets with yellow centers. I'm just going to do these star-shaped flowers, kind of like cherry blossoms. If I were painting more realistically, I would have, a pencil sketch below me, and I would draw out the actual, sketch of a violet, but we're just going off of the feeling of a violet. And it's a star-shaped flower. Got all my petals pointing to the center. And using wet and wet, I'm going to grab some lemon yellow deep. Just kind of place these little stamens in the center and watch it bleed into the purple, but not overdo it. And then come back to my purple and keep playing with these violet shapes. With these violets, so I don't want to pull people in a straight line down from this peony because this is obviously the first place people are going to land with their eyes. It's just very focal and it's pointing to a corner. So I don't want to just have a string of violets going straight down. I want to help people's eyes lead through the piece, which I want them to come here next and then come back over here. So I'm maybe going to have some violets peeking like a trail over here, another S shape. But overall, think about how wildflowers grow. If you were to pluck a stem of delphinium or larkspur or whatever, it would curve like an S shape. And so I'm just going to lead. I know violets don't grow like that, but I'm just going to place compositionally these violets in kind of like an S shape so I can help frame the overall zigzag that I want. And I'm slightly mixing up the purple hue, again, to help create movement. So I'm leading people through this piece in every way possible with the peonies, with the S shape of these violets or delphinium, whatever they are. They could be either. I'm going to go back and grab some yellow now that I have more on my paper. It could also be irises with these colors that I'm using. Irided iris. It's a loose floral piece, so it's all about color and shape. I'm going to go back on some of these purple flowers and darken some petals. We need some depth. I'm just grabbing a darker purple color. I'm going to use wet and wet technique. Okay, and now we can start to place stems for the violets. Before moving on, I want some yellow in here. We need some yellow. Grabbing lemon yellow deep. Let's pull people this way. So let's do some daffodil. So right now I've got this diagonal line with my yellow and I'm gonna place another third element here. No real method to the overall shape of daffodils. I'm just kind of giving it this ball area with my yellow and pulling out teardropped or leaf-shaped petals from the center and using this orange color to kind of draw people's eyes to it. So now we need our third pinkish, corally peony element, and I'm going to make it a bud so it doesn't take up much space because I don't want to crowd this area. I just want it to reference this color so that we don't have a pair and we have an odd number so we keep people's eyes bouncing around the page. So I'm just going to pull it right here. adding in some of that turquoise color that they have in the design direction sheet with phthalo turquoise. Let's maybe do some forget-me-nots or bluebells. Just using these little marks to fill in some white space, but I don't want to overdo it, and I'm creating this V shape because I know a stem is going to go right there. And again, thinking about my zigzags, so I might come up here and down here with this. So I'm now making this whole area kind of my reference of this turquoise color. And it's going behind those violets to kind of frame them. And then adding my last little bits, stems and leaves usually. So we're going to pull some out here. And there you have it. Floral composition, loose style watercolor. Very busy, very dense, like the design direction asked for. Just overall making sure our piece leads in zigzags with color and shape. We've got our 3 peonies, we've got our S shape with our violets, and we've got our chunks of blues and yellows that create a zigzag in the piece. So people's eyes are never landing on an area and staying there because it creates a pair or clumping all of the same types of flowers in one specific area. We're continually letting our viewer go through our piece in a zigzag so that it doesn't ever feel stale or stagnant. Creating movement is key. So there you have it. That is my approach to composition, loose style floral watercolor piece that is a bit more busy, a bit more wildflowery like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know below what type of tutorial you'd love to see from us next, whether it's watercolor, calligraphy, design. We'd love to hear your ideas. Also, make sure you check out all of those videos that I mentioned in this tutorial on specific shapes in tutorials like the peony tutorial, the leaf one, etc. And then for all the supplies that I use in this video and more resources, check the links below. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.